Hello and welcome back to Hold On I'm Talking Brother. My name is Joe Greenwood and you are listening to our preview of UFC 293, which is headlined by Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland for the middleweight title, live from Sydney, Australia. As per usual, I am joined by my regular co-host Tom Ballum. Tom, it's poor, isn't it? This is a poor card. This is not good. This is not a good title fight. And get hyped, listeners, because we're going to break this card down.
It's a sad note to start on, Joe. But yeah, it's not PPV material. The UFC bizarrely seemed to neglect this from the get-go. You know, a lot of it seems to be predicated on Du Plessis and Adesanya. That would have been a very stimulating, exciting fight to watch, or at least to think about. So we know that they were scrambling, but from the get-go, it didn't seem like it was that well planned. Where is Volkanovski in front of the home crowd? You know, we want it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. I mean, people talked about this of like, why didn't they just save Whittaker Du Plessis for this card? You know, because like, if we're being realistic, what were the chances that Du Plessis could turn around in 8 weeks to then face Adesanya in a championship camp? Do you know what I mean?
Likewise Whittaker. Like he's going to get his third and final shot potentially if he beats Du Plessis at Adesanya. The grudge match, like his last chance. You know you don't get a fourth. Oh no. Yeah, that'll be in 8 weeks. By the way, you know,
it's not very well thought out now.
It's totally bizarre. I guess if I'm looking for some upside, Australia has been historically a fun place to go. You know, it's a good crowd.
Case in point, earlier this year, Volkanovski-Makhachev, that was transcendent.
That's my Volkanovski's walkout there is still my MMA moment of the year. Generally, that fight for me, I just very much enjoyed it, and so you know, I've got a soft spot for that feeling, and I would like to experience it again. Will we get that from Adesanya's walkout in front of his home? Well, not his home fans, but, you know, neighbouring country fans.
Probably not. Anyway, listeners, we're getting ahead of the cart here. Let's go into this. Me and Tom are going to break down UFC 293 with a gun next to our head, and we're going to give predictions for each fight. I'm going to predict who we think is going to win, and if we get that correct, that's 1 point, and we're going to go for the method as well. That's 2 points, 10 points on offer. Listeners, I am the defending champion, reigning champion at the moment, which irritates Tom massively. Listeners, his eye is twitching already at the mere mention of that.
I mean, Joe, I will say there is some pattern between like the UFC putting on poor events, me disengaging from the sport, and you capitalising on that. I will say that is an ongoing theme.
Excuses already. You're getting an excuse in for this card where, you know, my win is inevitable. And listeners, let's talk about another inevitable win. We've got a main event here of Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland, which is not even an 8-week build. It was like a 5-week build, wasn't it? That like Strickland had beat, what was that jabroni's name? Abus Magomedov? That sounds kind of like Nurmagomedov. Let's get him in there. He gets steamrolled by Sean Strickland, which is
great performance. Great. It's a great performance. The guy had known for coming out fast, blowing people away. Strickland rolled with him, you know, played straight into Strickland's hands, and he executed. He got a finish, Joe. He finished him. Yeah. I enjoyed it. I think all credit to Strickland.
You've got a weird thing for Sean Strickland. Like
here we go. Here we go. Yeah, but
you do defend him a lot. Like, you overly defend him as a fighter. It's weird. You defend him more as a fighter, and I defend him more as a person, which is weird.
I'll tell you what it is.
Right.
It's his world view, Joe. It just resonates on so many levels. I think he's one of the profound philosophers of our time and should be recognised as such. No, obviously it's not that. I just deal with what I see on paper. All right, people had been rubbishing Strickland, weren't impressed with his fight over Cannonier, which, yes, I also thought he won that. And yeah, Abus had got some big push from the UFC after blowing away, was it Stoltzfus or something like that on his debut?
No.
Yeah, well, quite. But the UFC was building him up. All right, they matched Strickland again, short notice main event, and you know, he deals with those criticisms, and he gets a finish. A good finish over a man who posed some threat in the first round.
A guy who's got 3 minutes of fury in a main event where Sean Strickland doesn't really get finished either.
Joe, Sean Strickland got absolutely clapped by Alex Pereira. You know?
Yeah, but that's Pereira one of the dumbest game plans I've ever seen.
That is in Strickland's memory bank. You know, that is a part of who he is right now. He didn't enjoy that. That wasn't a good experience for him. He didn't want that to happen again. And he had a guy come out hot, big, powerful striker, and let the guy play into him perfectly. It was a fun fight.
Okay.
Not like, all right, get him in front of the champ fun.
No. Well, this is the weird thing with it, isn't it? We touched on it briefly, but the whole like Duplessis thing it sat right there, even before he beat Whittaker, and then he gets the confirmation win against Whittaker of like, this guy's the number one. You have to give him the title fight. There's no question about this. And now we got Strickland stepping in because Duplessis obviously can't make that fight in 8-9 weeks, which is fair enough. And now Strickland's in this fight, and they're even hinting, like, Dana saying, like, well, I don't like it when people turn down fights. I'm like, what? So Duplessis is not going to get the next one? Duplessis should be front row for this fight, and he is. He's going to get in his face, and they're going to sell this weird race war fight afterwards.
You look down this rankings in the middleweight division, and it is a desert. It's an absolute barren wasteland.
Well, that's why I get why they put Abus in there with Strickland, where it's just like, well, if he beats Strickland, then hey ho, we've potentially got a new guy that we can toss out there. But then obviously a nice easy win for Strickland, really, which is a nice highlight reel finish. Oh, he knocked this guy out in his last fight.
Joe, I have to say something.
Yeah.
Sean Strickland.
Yeah.
You actually take a moment to look at the guy's run in the UFC in the last few years.
Right.
You have to just take a look, all right? Going into that, admittedly hilarious loss to Pereira where he got caught with a left hook. Yes, the man is on a 6-fight streak.
Yeah.
Fighting, yes, the middling part of the middleweight division, but usually ranked guys like Brendan Allen. All right, that's a win.
Well, hold on. When he fought Allen, that he was not a ranked guy, but let's just get that straight.
No, but Allen is good. He's not world class, but he's good.
He's all right.
Jack Hermanson.
Sure.
Nordine Taleb.
Sure.
I'm pushing it a bit. All right, and then
you skipped over your
following
boy, Jack Marshman.
I think he's finally been cut. I haven't seen him rear his beautiful face for a little while, and then goes in. All right, has a very poor performance against Pereira. We don't need to discuss that further. It's out there. I thought he won the Cannonier fight. Cannonier, we know he's a top 5 guy, and then of course Imavov before his recent outing. Imavov is a quality win.
At light heavyweight, when Imavov had cut weight to 185, and he's just like, oh no, you don't have to do that now, and he weighed in at 195 and Strickland weighed in at 205. It's just weird asterisks on the whole thing, and almost the weirdest thing is that he's fighting Adesanya, and the backup fighter's Cannonier, a guy who beat him 9 months ago. Like, I'm sorry, man, like, I'm struggling to...
He didn't know, really. He didn't though. He didn't beat him.
He did. I had Cannonier winning. And you know what? I actually remember this. I actually gave all 5 rounds to Cannonier.
Absolute mentalist. You absolute mentalist. No. He outstruck him. Anyway.
No, he didn't.
Anyway. Yes, he did, Joe. It's a matter of... It's on the record. Sean Strickland outstruck Jared Cannonier. All right? Took no damage. Was a little bit tentative. Anyway.
152 to 141.
Decisive. Now, look. What number is bigger, Joe? That's right. Sean Strickland's 152. Whatever you say, that fight was a 55-45. Now, I don't mean in the scores. I mean percentage over who won the fight.
Yeah.
Nobody really lost. Nobody really won. Okay? And this is what we got. We got Sean Strickland going in there against one of the greatest of all time, a man who has an almost perfect record and has corrected the one blip that was on it. What does Strickland need to do to win this fight?
Now, I know this sounds odd, what I'm about to say, and in a way obvious, But Tom, for Sean Strickland to win this fight, he needs to mix his martial arts. Does that like in a phrase that makes sense?
I mean, it suggests to me that you're giving him the age-old advice to wrestle Izzy.
No, not necessarily.
Time-tested, time-honoured advice. Take him down, Sean. Well, take him down.
No, this is the thing: is he more likely to take him down because he's not a wrestler? Like, for example, when he fought Vettori, when Adesanya fought Vettori, he knew what he was going to do. He was going to come in there and he was going to try and wrestle him. He's just like, well, I'm going to be ready for that. When he fought Whittaker, the second time, he knew what he was going to do, right? There has to be a level of variety to what Strickland's offering, whereby Adesanya can't just flow into his natural game plan. This sounds utterly ridiculous. I'm so sorry. This is absolutely ludicrous.
It sounds like you don't believe what you're saying, Joe.
In a sense, I don't believe what I'm saying.
All right. Well, let me provide some facts for you. Sean Strickland is very good at sticking in the pocket and just out of range, constantly applying pressure, wearing opponents down and landing his jab. Can he do that to Adesanya? And if he has any success, what effect might that have on Adesanya?
Okay, can he do that to Adesanya? As in, can Sean Strickland press the action, move forward, jab? Yes, he can do that, because I probably think that Adesanya will oblige that to a certain extent.
He will. I think Adesanya likes to counter from... Yeah, absolutely.
He loves to counter. He'll be chopping at the lead leg. The thing is with Strickland as well is that, like, he's not, like, super heavy on any leg, like when he sort of moves between stances. And he tends to be more orthodox. You know, he tends to use, like, the rear right hand quite close to his chin, sort of, like, right under his chin, and the sort of like left hand sort of like reaching, touching out there. Strike comes in or a kick and he sort of like sweeps. He sort of does like a sweeping motion. You know, that left hand is going to be sweeping a lot. Like, he's going to be sweeping. That kick is going to be landing to the gut. You know, the problem that I have is that like, when I think about this fight of like, how is Strickland going to win this? It is going to have to be grabbing something and pulling him into a clinch and trying to work something into a clinch. And it's just like, how is he going to get to that clinch? Will Adesanya allow him to get into that clinch? Would Adesanya even want to be in the clinch? He probably would. Like, he probably would do some damage in there.
Yeah, Adesanya's strong in the clinch.
So, for example, I watched the Brendan Allen fight this morning before we recorded, and Strickland did a fair bit of damage in the first round from taking Allen down off a court kick. And I'm wondering if that's going to have to be something. It's going to have to be something like that to like take rounds from Adesanya, because he's not going to finish him. So it's just like, okay, how can you take rounds from him? And it probably is going to have to be off like court kicks. It's going to have to be off of like throwing a jab, missing, and just using it to grab him. Do you know what I mean? Like he throws the left hand out there, he misses, just like, oh, it's fine, I'm just going to grab him anyway. Grab the back of the neck, just like grab into a clinch, pull into a clinch from there and try and muscle him from there. You know, it's going to have to be from that. And also, there was the fight against Cannonier, where you could see that Eric Nixick, his coach, who, by the way, is a tremendous coach, tremendous game planner, was telling him, throw the rear leg as a kick, like throw it up the middle from there. And he just didn't do it. And then against Imavov, he threw that rear leg kick up the middle, and it actually had some like decent results. So I think that is something maybe Strickland can do, is not have like a continuous pattern or rhythm, just always like being nothing like kind of like flowing into one of the other, if that makes sense.
No, exactly. As you said, to mix the martial arts, to create situations where they're not just kind of trading shots on the feet, and Sean is, you know, headhunting with his little powder puff jabs, basically. Yeah. The patented Sean Strickland method, the test that so few have failed to overcome, let me just say, is not going to be enough here against Adesanya. All right, he mixes in other elements of the game. He tries to catch kicks, work in from there. He throws that cut kick up to the body that you were referencing. Hopefully he works in a few low leg kicks of his own. And what he will have some success in, which other people have struggled massively, I'm looking at Paulo Costa, for example, is keeping a constant pressure and cutting off the cage. Now, not cutting off the cage as in that he leaves Adesanya nowhere to go, but actually staying in the danger zone longer than Paulo Costa was able to. You won't be able to just... I don't think he's just exiting out the side like he was able to against Paulo Costa. I think Strickland will stay in that space where the danger remains. And so, you have to say, you take someone like Jared Cannonier, his fight with Adesanya. Ultimately, it was quite a close fight. I mean, Adesanya was always going to win it, but he wasn't...
He was always out of distance. It was like when Holloway fought Frankie Edgar, and he won 4 rounds to 1. But it was just like at no stage was he like beating him up badly. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the Ortega one where like Jesus Christ, this guy shouldn't be in there with him. It was like he's doing enough to stay in the fight, but not enough to actually win the fight. And I think that'll be something that will be there for Strickland, is an ability to stay in the fight. I think also people have referenced the Costa fight, and I think that that's a fair one. In terms of like broke down the body, went to the head. Like that is what Adesanya will do in this fight. He'll break down the legs, he'll break down the body, then he'll go to the head. Like that will just be the method to it. The thing is actually in Strickland's favour is that he's not as muscly as Costa, so he's not having to carry as much. Like he's not going to like gas out in the same way that Costa did, where Costa tried pressing forward, was getting beaten up, was missing because obviously he's got short arms, so everything has to be in hook range. Obviously he can't get there.
And terrible ring craft as well.
Which I will say Strickland is not a master of. Strickland often crosses his feet as well, where Adesanya will catch him doing that. He will catch him crossing his feet, and he probably will knock him down off a leg kick just from that.
It sounds like here, Joe, you're torn between a total humbling a la Pereira, Strickland, or a 60-40% win, outstriking him, outpointing him over 5 rounds. What's it going to be?
I mean, it depends on the motivation for Adesanya.
I think it's there. I think it's there as well.
I think he very much dislikes Strickland for obvious reasons. And I think that we haven't really talked about Izzy because what can we say about him? Like, I think
it's all out there, Joe. His back catalogue is vast now.
And our back catalogue of loving him, or at least for me, loving him, is I jest. Obviously, Tom is a big fan as well. Is out there. We know his game. We have an understanding of it, but I always feel like there's something more that he's got hidden behind. And I don't know, I just think that there's, that whole meme of like, oh, he's got that dog in him. I think he's got that nasty bastard in him at the moment, and I think he wants to hurt Strickland, and I think he wants to put a marker down, and I think he wants to say, this is my year, and every year is my year, and I'm going to take that Pereira performance where I got the finish in the second, and I want to get it in the first. I think he's got that in him this fight. And I do think he's going to knock him out, and I do think it's going to be absolutely horrendous butchering of Sean Strickland this week. I think he's going to butcher him. Like, I think he's just going to go in there. Strickland's going to start jamming with him. He's going to like, this guy doesn't deserve to be in here with me. Like, I can just, it's my sense, it's my feeling. I'm projecting, obviously. I never want to see Sean Strickland in the title fight again. Please, Izzy, remove any doubt. Adesanya knockout.
All right, Joe. I understand your narrative, and it would make for entertaining. Would be the wrong word. That's a very like Roman Colosseum kind of.
Satisfying is the word.
I don't know if that would count as a big statement for me. I don't know what Adesanya can do with a fight like this. I really don't know. Or show something special, show an extra level of ferocity, show some more diversity, take some more risks. But he's had that put in front of him before, and he's declined the invitation to take more risks. He knows what can happen. There's a lot riding on it, for him. if he were to get embarrassed by Strickland, you know, that would be a blotch on the record to stain out, you know, a lot of his previous work.
That would be worse than anything that happened to Anderson Silva, like post him being washed as well.
Oh,
like,
Lord.
Yeah, that is that level for me. Like, there's a whole thing with, like, this title fight compared to the other Izzy title fights. It's like, the other ones had something there where it's either I'm fighting, like, the top guy, I'm fighting a proper contender, or I'm fighting a guy who I've got an issue with.
Or a juicy beefcake.
Yeah, or someone who's got all three, which is Paulo Costa. You know, like, that was... do you know what I mean? Like, it was... He fought the top contender in Costa, you know, and he had a bit of a personal thing with him. He fought the number one guy, which is Robert Whittaker. You know, he fought Cannonier, who had fought his way up to contendership, you know, as much as he may have not been excited for that fight, and I very much wasn't. Or he fought Pereira, who he had the history with, and who has been manufactured as the number one contender. You know, there's always something there. Whereas with this one, it was like they had a bit of an argument at a press conference last year.
No, I hear you. You go further back. I mean, you even look at like Romero. You look at the second Vettori fight that was for the belt. There's question marks about, you know, from their first fight. So, yeah. I guess there would be one fight I'd pick out where Adesanya actually, you know, there wasn't that much going on into the fight. It just kind of happened. And it was an absolute banger, Joe. It was Gastelum, Adesanya.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know, that was a hard fight to justify at the time, and it turned out to be a lot of fun. So more of that would be great. I don't see it happening.
No.
I don't see it happening. I think it will be a, you know, very drawn out affair with constant pitter patter on each side, and Adesanya just doing enough, edging ahead.
50-45.
Yeah, likely taking all the rounds by decision. Perhaps dropping a round or two here and there. I don't think that's impossible.
I really hope not, because I hated the reaction to the Whittaker rematch where people are like, I think Robert Whittaker won that fight. And I'm like, oh, you're blind. Okay, great. Thank you for confirming that. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to be any strain of an argument that Sean Strickland did anything of any worth in this fight.
The thing is, Adesanya, like, Strickland's gonna oblige him. He's gonna give Adesanya what he wants. So really, this is a nice chance for him to, you know, paint that picture and add another marker to his highlight reel. Like, Strickland will be there. He'll be kind of, you know, he's in that space to be hit. He's there to be countered. I don't see him being, well, I don't see Strickland getting caught like he did against Pereira. That would, well, it wouldn't shock me, but it's hard to picture that. I picture him implementing his trademark style and kind of rolling with punches and just being out the way enough, you know, getting enough off in Izzy's face that it's frustrating. A few awkward exchanges in the clinch, you know, a little bit of point scoring with kicks, and decision win for Adesanya. Very unexciting.
Fair enough. What's the just ask this as a quick sort of end point. Up to this point, what do you think is Adesanya's best title fight performance, and or favourite?
Well, I mean, okay, they're not the same.
No,
they're not the same. The best I would have to be, obviously, he hasn't closed the book on Pereira. I want to be clear about that. He definitely has not closed the book.
No.
But given what's riding on it there, going out in his last performance, you know, a big test in front of him, you have to say it's his best performance to put away the guy that has beaten him, you know, 3 times before and knocked him out last time they fought. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. Any comeback on that, Joe? You have to. That has to be
the best performance. Yeah, that's the best one. Totally agree.
But I would say, I mean, I guess my favourite or most memorable, probably. I mean, he absolutely humiliated Costa, but that was very predictable. Maybe the first fight with Robert Whittaker.
See, it's funny you say that. The Costa one's my favourite one, and it's actually the one I've watched the most. Like, I just watch it and I'm just like, it's just superb. Like, it's the
celebration at the end that you enjoy, though, isn't it?
I mean, do I have a gif of that you know I occasionally watch for hours on end? Maybe. Listen, listeners, we'll talk about the future with Adesanya of what are the matchups down the line. the Duplessis, the Chimaev fight. Like, we'll talk about that. The Bo Nickel fight. We'll talk about that next week. Yeah. But listeners, I know what you're rock hard for right now. It is Tai Tuivasa versus Alexander Volkov. We can't run from it anymore, Tom. We can't do it. We have to talk about this fight. Now, if I were to ask you to paint what would be the dominant picture of this fight coming up, would it be Volkov kicking Tuivasa in the stomach and circling off and jabbing him at range, and then Tuivasa throwing a massive bowling ball right hand and whiffing on it?
Yes, I can. That is guaranteed. You know, any odds you can get, place them, take it. Doesn't matter what they are, because you will cash. Yeah, that's absolutely the dominant narrative, and I don't hate it, Joe. That can be fun. I can tell you though, looking at this fight, I'm falling into a familiar trap, Joe.
Same.
And that trap is that, you know, Volkov should win this fight. He should win this fight.
He should win this fight, yes. Yes, he should win this fight. He should win this fight in every aspect. Right?
I mean, he came on and he said, I'm better than Tai Tuivasa everywhere, at everything.
Yes.
And I nodded my head in agreement. And then, you know, and then the image of him wading in the last 30 seconds against Derek Lewis came blurring like a full motion picture into my brain. I don't think that's something I will ever forget. Top, you know, 10 UFC moments.
I mean, at least... I remember where you were. You were in an airport watching it, weren't you? Weren't you in like Singapore or something ridiculous?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah,
I believe so. And then it's just, you know, it has gone down in the history books. Obviously, I think it was the biggest strike differential that somebody's come back from to win a fight.
Yeah.
Top man there, Derek Lewis. And that danger is ever present. Of course, with heavyweights anyway, but also because of what Volkov is, because of the range he has. He's like going over the top or around the side of one of those strikes, you know, when you have the kind of the heavyweight mobility factored in.
Like
Volkov, he's vulnerable.
He barrels forward with the weight behind him. I'm talking about Tuivasa.
Yeah, and I'm talking about Volkov being fully extended, you know, at the time.
Yeah. Do you remember with the Derek Lewis one? He was sort of like throwing a kick and then he was just like, wait, what am I doing? And then he's like on one leg taking a shot from Lewis.
All wrapped up. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, all kind of...
all over the place. I mean, he must have learned his lesson, right? Like, you're in the third round and you're up and you're cruising. You're kicking that calf and you're circling off. You're jabbing to the body, you're circling. I mean, he also must have watched Garn Tuivasa and been like, oh, I'm kneeing this guy in the gut as much as I can. You know, I'm going to clinch him, knee him in the gut, throw shots to the gut. He has to have seen that. Like, the image for me as well is just like, I can see Volkov just pulling away in every round and Tuivasa realising this and just having to hurl something at him. You know, again, Tuivasa doesn't have a kicking game at all, does he? Like, this is like, I can't even think of him throwing a calf kick. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he's got a bit of that Mark Hunt, no? Bit of those big
this
chopping.
Is the thing. A guy from Australia who's a bit barrely and throws big shots gets compared to Mark Hunt. These are not Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt could throw head kicks, like, you know, at least back in the day. But, you know, I don't know. Like, again, for Tuivasa as well, the body is going to have to be the place he goes to. You know, throw to the body so that you can slow him down and then you can throw the big one up top. It's just a classic game plan. You also got the fortune of, like, you're facing the taller man as well, so when you punch upwards, which is tiring, but it does protect you. However, this is mixed martial arts, so that knee will be coming up through the middle to the gut. I mean, Tom, how can I skirt around this anymore? Volkov by decision.
Yeah, I've gone for the same, Joe. You have to, you're right. I'm a man of science and logic, and that must prevail. It must. It must. But I have fallen into that trap before, and I might have had a moment where, well, I'm on record going to the Aspinall fight, extolling Volkov's virtues before he had a very, very poor performance in London last year.
True, but Taito Uvasa is no Tom Aspinall, so let's make sure that the listeners are aware of our feelings on that.
No, that of course, but he showed also though Volkov a brittleness, like very early brittleness against Aspinall. I don't know how well you recall that first round, but Aspinall hurt him with the first strike he threw. Yeah. You know, Volkov just folded basically and gave up that submission in the end. Yeah,
I think he also like didn't fancy it. Like after
all right. Let me put it like this, Joe. Taito Uvasa in Australia. The guy has become, you know, like a movement of his own. The bright lights. Yeah, I don't know. It's not like the thing is, I don't hate this fight. It can't be a co-main, Joe. Can't be a co-main. It can't be a co-main. But when we move on to our next fight, you will see why it is. Tune in for more.
Tune in for more. We are talking about Manon is back at flyweight. Now, this is the annoying thing: is he was supposed to be facing Kai Kara France.
Yeah.
I was just like, if we just had that, I'd be like, hell yeah. Instead, he's facing Felipe dos Santos, who's coming off one win in the LFA against Hugo Paiva, who I believe is related to Raulian Paiva. So you know, you can give that credit if you want. I mean, man, like, you know, what am I supposed to say about this?
Well, can you tell us any more about the 63rd ranked in Brazil flyweight Felipe dos Santos?
I can tell you he's got some subs. He's got some sub wins.
He is Brazilian. That is true.
He is Brazilian. Look, I mean, this should just be how can I say this? A sort of platform performance for Manal Cap. I don't know how to get around this other than saying that Manal Cap should go out there and whoop this guy.
I can see with every passing second, Joe, your enthusiasm to discuss this is drawing out of you like your life force.
Yeah,
I'm not going to expand any further than that. Yeah, I've picked Manal Cap to win this decision.
Yeah,
by decision.
Yeah, same. I've got decision as well. Like, let's move on. Let's move on to Justin Taffer versus who's this jabroni? Oh, yeah, actually,
Austin
I did look
Lane.
at Austin
Lane,
the
former NFL player. Yep.
Who, by the way, he's had 2 fights in the Contender Series. He won his last one, so that's why he's got a contract now. Who did he fight in the first one that he lost to? Take a guess.
On the Contender Series?
On the Contender Series. Who did he lose to?
Oh, Lord. I should have done this kind of research going into this. I've written my pick now. It's too late. Who is it?
He lost to Greg Hardy in his first one. Yeah, Greg Hardy, now of being knocked out in bare knuckle organisations. That's not BKFC, by the way. So it shows you where he's fallen, thankfully. So, that's who's facing Justin Taffer. Justin Taffer, is it his brother, Junior Taffer, who just knocked out Parker Porter as well? I'll always have hatred for Justin Taffer for the time he fought, was it Carlos Felipe? And they did the arm-to-arm boxer thing, you know, where they're doing that and they just start hooking. And I was just like, this is cringe. Like, you're not a boxer, you're an MMA fighter. Take that fucker down. You know what I mean? Like, do something. Yeah. And again, got the Mark Hunt thing of, like, Australian and can bang. So that's the sort of build there. But this Austin Lane, I have actually watched his finishes, as in him being finished. And it is all, it's all knockouts. So this is classic booking of, we got Australian guy, let's give him someone to knock out. So yeah, Justin Taffer by knockout for me.
So Joe, I have been very critical of Justin Taffer in the past. Yes, that moment stands out, but I mean also just any scrutiny here of this, he's been built up to be something more than he perhaps is. You just kind of take a look at those wins. Harry Hunsucker and who now of light heavyweight, I believe, and Parker Porter, Joe. I mean, good lord, those are your wins. This is a man who lost to Jorgen De Castro. I mean, good God, I have challenged.
That's the quote. That's the quote that'll be on his gravestone. This is the man who lost to Jorgen De Castro. Sorry.
and I'm hoping he loses to Austin Lane. You know?
Oh, really?
I'm hoping so, Joe. I've gone against the odds makers of this one, who have fallen into the narrative which you yourself have been trapped by. Austin Lane, much longer man. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully somebody's moulded that into something more. It has been a few years since that Greg Hardy lost. In the kind of time since then, Francis Ngannou moved from Cameroon to France,
right?
And became.
Fair enough.
That's what I'm hoping.
So what's your pick?
Austin Lane to win this fight by decision.
Oof, that's gonna be disgusting. That's what, if it gets to the second round, I'm skimming it. I'm skimming. By the way, we forgot to mention these two have actually fought before earlier this year, but it ended in an eye poke after 30 seconds. Nothing had happened in the fight, so actually maybe I should have looked at that. Taffa wanted out, so anyway, Tyson Pedro versus Anton Tukalj. All I know is that the last time Pedro fought, I picked against him and then he won.
That's not correct, Joe. He's coming off a loss to Modestas Bukauskas.
Bukaki, yes, thank you. That's what you were just about to say. Harry Hunsucker was the fight I was picking. That was the one I messed up. I got that hideously wrong. He faces Tukalj, who has fought Yailton Almeida. I remember that fight. And he lost to him by rear naked choke. And sure. Is this another one where they're feeding a guy just for a hometown win, Tom?
Nope, because I've picked Tukalj, Joe. Stop getting seduced by the easy narratives. I'll tell you why. Tyson Pedro, is another one with an extremely padded record with a highlight reel built off poor old Harry Hunsucker again. Building Australian talents, since 2021.
Okay, who's got the better wins then?
I mean, unfortunately, you have to go deep into Brave Combat Federation to see Tukalj in action.
Here we go. Tyson Pedro, Khalil Roundtree choked him out. Paul Craig knocked him out. Ike Villanueva finished him with leg kicks. Yeah,
Joe. At this point, Khalil Roundtree didn't even know where Bangkok was. All right, this is back in 2016. That fight does not go the same if that happens again.
However, he has also lost to 2018 Shogun, so there's that, which might be
and OSP and Ilir Latifi. Oh my lord, and Ilir Latifi. Jesus, Joe, this is too much. I can't take this seriously. How is this the main card on a pay-per-view?
I know. I've gone for Tyson Pedro by knockout.
Yeah, it's that or a Tukalj decision. I think Tukalj has got the resiliency to see it through to the end.
Sure,
and
why not?
Eke out a sloppy decision win.
I'm sorry, listeners, but you. By the way, listeners, you listen to some absolute magic. Me and Tom talking about Strickland and Adesanya for over 20 minutes. Like that was like magic right there. And then just breezing through the rest of this main card here. Prelims. Tom?
Is there a prelim fight you want to pick out?
No. Let's. Carlos Ulberg versus Daeun Jung.
Carlos Ulberg, yeah.
He's a handsome man. He's facing Daeun Jung. Do you think that they can try and build something with Ulberg? Like, do you think that they're...
I do. I was about to say, this is a man from Australia or New Zealand who hasn't had his record padded with Harry Hunsucker, and yet has still got quite an impressive highlight reel, that's building despite that. So, yeah, I certainly do. I don't think that Daeun Jung is a complete pushover. I don't think he's made to be a can. I think he's, shown quite a well-rounded, good fundamentals in his career so far. So, yeah, this will be an interesting test for Ulberg to see how far he can go. Of course, we're looking at 3 first-round knockouts for him coming into this fight.
Yeah. That's
the way to announce yourself. So, let's see.
Absolutely. Right. Tom, should we talk about UFC Paris quickly? Go over that?
Sure, Joe. As you know, I haven't watched that as yet, so I will leave that in your hands.
I got listen. I think I this is quite fun. Well, I say it's funny. Let's talk about the Manon Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas fight. Now, Namajunas moves up to flyweight, and it was obviously it's a good opportunity there. You're facing potentially the number one contender in Fiorot. If you beat her, you can just slip into a title shot quite easily. And if Fiorot wins, then you got a certified number one contender. And she's beaten the strawweight champ, former strawweight champ. Good spot to be in, right? Namajunas breaks her little finger in the first round and can't really make a fist there, so she's struggling to strike with her right hand. What does her coach, Pat Barry, say? Ignore that. You just got to tough it out. Now, Tom, me and you are not coaches. However, I think what we may have said is fall on your kicking game, because she was actually kicking quite well in that first round and then just proceeded to not do that, and instead just worked orthodox and just threw the left hand from there, feinted the right occasionally and threw occasional kicks. I would just said, just kick the whole time. Kick to the body, side kicks to the body, kicks to the legs, kick up top, throw a left hand behind it occasionally. You just got to keep scoring on her, because you're not going to be able to finish her now. And if you can, maybe try and grapple her. But there was no advice from there. And what was even more interesting was that Fiorot was in the corner, I think after the first round, going she's messed up her right hand. And they were like, great, this is what you have to do. And they gave her specific advice from there. Throw the left kick from there to the head, so she has to try and block with the right hand. I kind of dislike the whole Namajunas Pat Barry analysis that people give of their relationship. I think I find their relationship weird anyway. What's a weirder relationship, them or Ian Gary and his strangely old wife?
Oh no, Pat Barry takes the biscuit, Joe. No, he really does. I think there's some pretty legitimate and concerning questions there. Come on.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's a weird one. Can I tell you a story that I saw, which was so Namajunas' last fight before this was the Carlos Esparza title fight, and she didn't perform in that fight. She lost the title. Apparently, before she went out, her and Pat Barry, and actually I think that whole week, they kept bumping into Sean Strickland, who proceeded to talk shit to them about their relationship, and I think it might have gotten into her head. Yeah. I think if it had come from anyone else other than Sean Strickland, she might have listened to it. That's the moral of the story there. A bit of a weird spot for her, and not to get too morbid, but I do foresee in the future, maybe 5 years down the line, a story about them living off the grid and then probably murdering each other and then themselves, perhaps. I don't know. Am I off base here, Tom?
Woof. That's that's scathing. Are we talking about another kind of, that standoff Waco style?
Yeah,
hostage taking. Let's pray that doesn't happen. Is that your main takeaway from the Fiorot Rose Namajunas fight?
Yeah, and I think Fiorot should get the title shot next.
Yeah, of course. Okay.
By the way,
for Rose, is this the peak? She's hit a peak. She's on the way down.
I don't know what's up with her as a fighter. So, if you had someone in this position, like in any other division, what would you do? You'd be like, okay, well, let's try and find some fun fights for you, and maybe we can build up a bit of momentum somewhere. It's just, I think, first off, I find some of the fan base around her and the love for her weirdly disingenuous. We go oh, I love Rose Namajunas. Why? I feel like there's this whole thing around her character where she's quite a sensitive person, I think, and I think people, I don't know, I think that people sort of cotton on to this idea of liking her quite a lot, and they seem to really want to sort of push her to be out there, and I think that she doesn't really want to be out there anymore, to be honest. And I think it'd probably be for the best if she didn't fight at all or for a while until she felt truly motivated, because she could just walk back into a big spot at any stage, really. She has got a bit of a name to her. Yeah, I don't know, it's just a bit of a weird character for me, and I don't want to say those horrible things that I've said, but it inspired me to say it, so maybe there's something there. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. What's your read of this, Tom? What's your read of her as a fighter in her career?
It's definitely studded by some major highs. Of course, not having seen the Fiorot fight, it's hard for me to comment of course, an injury like that in the first round really compromises one's style, especially if they're used to implementing a striking game. Of course, against Wei Li, she was able to implement some takedowns. I would say that's an obvious weapon to use against Fiorot when possible. But I'm not in a place to comment on that, having not seen the fight. I don't think this is over yet for Rose. Still young, and yeah, let's be honest. We don't have many female stars there, Joe. She's definitely that. She's definitely that. Although she might not be at the same heights as some in the men's game. If you're going to ask anyone to name 5 MMA fighters, women's MMA fighters, Rose is going to be in that 5.
Yeah, for sure. I by the way, can I recommend a fight that happened the week before? If you may not seen it, was the Erin Blanchfield Tyler Santos fight.
Yeah,
so good. That was so good.
I saw the first round of that, and Tyler Santos took it for me.
Yes, and then Blanchfield took 2 and 3, but it was like that was a dogged fight. Like, it was excellent.
Well, she was marching forward, taking it on her nose in the first round, Joe. So she must have really had to dig deep to get through it. Tyler Santos was just shucking her off, looked very comfortable, fighting off any kind of takedowns from Blanchfield. But I trust then she was able to turn that around in the second and third. So she got through then.
Absolutely, and she was still taking damage, but like she was dishing it out as well. The thing is, like, they were like Santos got control for like the second round, and Blanchfield was landing some ground and pound, and then like Santos would, like, she uncorked like this really quite lovely long 1-2 that like sort of like stung Blanchfield. You could see her like take a step back, but it just wasn't enough there to take that round. And then round 3, I think, was quite clear. Blanchfield won. It was just a tremendous back and forth, excellent fight. And it's a shame that we don't really see Tyler Santos fight that much. The last time she fought was the Shevchenko fight, where I felt like she won.
Yeah, I think that is quite well documented. Not going to find too many people, other than the biggest fanboys, challenging that. I mean, I guess another takeaway I had from that fight, and I think it will lead us into, I know, some words you wanted to say towards the end of the pod, and that's that, why is a fight like that happening in the apex, almost on the undercard, with no fanfare around it? If we're talking about a lack of female stars, you've got 2 very strong talents.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it did take place at UFC Singapore under the Korean Zombie Holloway.
Yeah, okay, well, for me, that's equivalent to fighting in the apex show. In fact, I've just referenced it. So, yeah, it's a backwater. That's not a big event. I mean, look at how devoid this pay-per-view is of talent.
Yeah,
I'm saying you put Blanchfield Santos on the main card here ahead of
perfect. That's a perfect spot for it. That's a perfect
ahead of every single fight, even including the co-main. I put that fight ahead of it.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, that'd be a great one to have there. You could have it, slot it in there, just ahead of Manon Cap versus this jabroni. Do you know what I mean? Like, freshen it up a bit. Get something interesting there. Get a contender fight in there. Like, this is the thing, is like, you can have contender fights for people who aren't from like that country. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that Manon Cap was supposed to fight Kai Kara France, and that would have been perfect, whatever else. But remember when they had Gaethje versus Fiziev in London? Like, it's just like they got no link to London, got no link to the fans there. But the fans ate it up because it was like an intense, important fight. That's what you want in these spots, and like Blanchfield Santos would have been absolutely perfect for that. And I don't know, it's just, we were talking before we recorded, but like my interest is like, it's so low. It's so low. I mean, I've watched a bit of PFL this year, and I can't get into it in the same way. It's just the lack of elbows, man. They just don't elbow each other. I've got to say, I'm not a big fan of the tournament setup for everyone. I'm okay with, like, I quite like the Bellator way, which is the Grand Prix across like a 14 to 18 month period. I much prefer that. Picking a division, we're going to have a Grand Prix. Perfect. Could even do 2 in a year for 2 divisions. Perfect. I don't love the tournament setup. I don't think it gets the best out of people. 4 or 5 fights in an 8-month period, that's barbaric. I just don't think you're not going to get the best out of people that way. And I think that when the PFL does buy up Bellator, which it seems that they're going to do, and they get all that talent in there, drop the tournaments and take the Grand Prix. Do the Grand Prix. That's the better system. I think you probably agree with me in that regard.
I need to see it implemented really by a organization that has the talent to generate the interest, you know?
Which I think the PFL will have if they buy Bellator.
Yeah, it's the first chance for anybody to contend with the UFC, you know, in a very long time, in the last 15 years or so. So, yeah, I obviously would love to see that. It looks like you're looking for any way out of the UFC here.
It's not that. I wish that the UFC could get away from being the UFC, if that makes sense. Like they're on such cruise control, and yeah, it's because they're ahead of everyone, and yeah, they're Coca-Cola, but they need a Pepsi to challenge them a little bit, to take some talent. You see it in wrestling at the moment. Like, you got WWE, you got AEW. AEW can pay WWE money for people. Like, they can do that. No one's there to challenge UFC with payments, but we're seeing it now with PFL, giving Francis a nice big contract.
Yeah, am I saying it? Did I rewrite that PFL have some sort of affiliation with Saudi Arabia now?
Yes, the Saudi Public Investment Fund have invested $100 million into the PFL. I hope a part of that $100 million is drop the tournaments. You know, like, you can have the $1 million prize at the end, but just do it at the end of a Grand Prix. Like, that makes much more sense to me.
I mean, it sounds like some serious competition is in the making. That's only good for fans. Again, slight concern with it, though, Joe, is, you know, we want to see the best fights. If you've got talent being sucked up and bidded for between two rival organizations, you know, there is a risk of that devolving into, you know, like, prolonged negotiations and cherry picking of fights, and, you know, more kind of prize fighter matchups rather than the best fighting the best. I guess I just have to say the UFC, it's been dropping the ball, and I, for one, you clearly, and I think a lot of other fans out there, they're ready for someone to come in and challenge, even at the risk of harming the sport in the short term for what it could represent in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I just I think that the UFC and actually MMA in general, it's lost a lot of fans. Like, it just doesn't have the same cultural cachet as it did 10 years ago. Conor with Ronda and all that, like that sort of level of superstar. Like, I know that they want Sean O'Malley to be that, but like, I just not feeling that's going to be the same just yet. And yeah, I don't know, it's just like, I think about the presentation a lot, and I'm like, I just want to skip. Like, I think there needs to be a massive clear out. I'm talking, just let Rogan go. Do you know what I mean? Just like, he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't do research for the fights, right, that he's watching. He doesn't even watch the fights that he's watching. Like, when he was talking about Gaethje Poirier, he's like, Gaethje didn't throw a single high kick in that that was the only one he threw. It's just like, he threw like 4 before that. And he's just like, what are you watching? You're not even watching the fight. You know, I think it needs a total redo. I think in terms of how they show it. And I know this is controversial. I really dislike the Bruce Buffer intros. Like, I hate them. You want to do it? Oh my god! You want to do away with the hallmarks of the UFC brand? Joe Rogan, Bruce Buffer. I think you were commenting that you didn't like the intro music. Face the Pain.
Face the Pain.
God, no! That should have been gone a decade ago, and that would have been too late. Like, do you know what it feels? It actually feels a bit chintzy and a bit cheap. Like, it feels kind of plasticky. You know, like when I watch the boxing, it's got like a prestige to it. Do you know what I mean? There's an ingrained prestigious quality to it. And I know that, like, okay, we don't want to be that because we want to be our own thing and whatever else. And I get that, that's fine. But like, it'd be nice if four times a year, you know, they talk about their big cards, the Madison Square Garden one, the International Fight Week, you know, when they go to certain places, like the Abu Dhabi cards, like, you know, these are our sort of like big prestige cards. For those like 3-4 cards a year, why not actually present it in a different way? Have a stage where they come out instead of just walking through the crowd. Do you know what I mean? Like, actually sell them as like a big, different thing. I don't know. Just music wise, it just feels like it's some sleepwalking mode, and
To me, that's all related to the ESPN deal and the volume of events, the lack of need to attract pay-per-views to build stars, which seems to have emerged, the reluctance to create brands that can rival their own, stars who can hold them to ransom. I do get the feeling that these big events, the Abu Dhabi card, the Madison Square Garden card, UFC London, and it seems going down under now as well, with the right fan base and the right names on the card, they can create moments. It's just the volume of dirge in between those events that's the big issue for me. I don't know that they do enough for me to distinguish the stars walkout, the big event feel from the, from the early entrance to a card.
Yeah,
I guess when the lights dim and they have the longer intro, and sometimes they'll mix in Izzy doing his,
a bit more production to his squad. But that's the thing, though.
Conor McGregor and Sinead O'Connor.
Of course, that was amazing. Doesn't that prove my point, though? Of just like, if they do it 4 times a year, they're like, we're going to give you.
But they do it. They do it. Isn't the problem? Isn't the problem
Conor and
that there's
Sinead,
so much in between?
What year was that?
It must be 2016,
2017. Before that, it was 2014 or 15, wasn't it?
I don't think Conor McGregor existed as a name until 2014. Yeah,
2015. I'm just saying, man.
But the larger problem, isn't it like the quality that we're getting, the quality of the matchups?
Yeah, on like a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, the quality is poor.
And the arena.
What, you mean the venues?
I mean, yeah, I do mean
the
venues.
Apex, yeah.
I mean, particularly the Apex, but they also seem to pick a lot of stadiums, with very poor acoustics, and
they pick arenas. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I would, in a way, I'd almost like it if they did one stadium show a year.
That'd be interesting.
I went to Wembley for AEW All In, the wrestling. They had there 81,000 people there. And it was incredible. The atmosphere was electric. The production was superb. Like, I was up on the top tier, but I was in like the 3rd row, so I was towards the front, so I could see everything. Clearly had a great view and all that. And they say like, it's the view isn't as good at a stadium or not. It's just like, you're not really there for the view. You're there for the atmosphere at a certain stage when you get into... And it's just like, you got the guys in the top deck who are all drunk. Yeah, and they're all like, they're just making the noise, and that's where the atmosphere comes down from there, and then everyone else gets swallowed into it. I don't know how you watch those stadium shows, whether it's WrestleMania or AEW at Wembley Stadium, and not go like, I wouldn't mind a piece of that. Can you imagine Conor McGregor coming out in a massive stage?
It's always been the occasion, anyway, for the actual viewer experience live. It's not, you have a better experience watching any of these sports on TV.
Absolutely.
I think we all know that. Yeah. It's stale. It needs to change. And until it does, Joe, we will be tuning out of the sport. That seems to be where we're left. And tuning out, here we are with this podcast. An hour in. Thank you very much for joining me, listeners. Can you like and subscribe, comment, please? We'll get back to you in the comments. And
email us at holdonbrother69@gmail.com. Going through the picks one last time, this time from the bottom up. Pedro Turcalj, I picked Pedro by knockout.
Turcalj decision.
Justin Taffa versus Austin Lane, I picked Taffa knockout.
Austin Lane decision.
Manal Cap versus Dos Santos, we both picked Cap by decision. Tuivasa versus Volkov, we both picked Volkov by decision. It's just so enticing, isn't it? And then in the main event, we both picked Israel Adesanya to retain his middleweight title against Sean Strickland. I've picked by knockout and Tom by decision. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week to break down this card in all its glory. Thank you so much. Goodbye and enjoy the fights.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.